The mountain man froze when he saw the tattoo on the woman they called the Black Widow. His horse shifted beneath him, sensing the sudden tension in his body. The reins went slack in his weathered hands. Ezekiel Flint had ridden into Copper Creek with no intention of stopping. The town square buzzed with an auction unlike any he'd seen. No cattle or land here, just debts and grievances being sold to the highest bidder. The auctioneer's voice cut through the desert air like a blade. His words carried the weight of a judge's gavel. Around him, men in dusty coats exchanged knowing glances. This wasn't commerce. This was retribution dressed up in legal ceremony. Zeke pulled his hat lower over his eyes. 15 years of hiding had taught him to blend into crowds like shadow into dusk. The less attention, the better. The longer he stayed invisible, the longer he stayed breathing. "Next item," the auctioneer called out, his voice rising above the murmur of the crowd. The notorious Leela Jackson herself, known far and wide as the Black Widow. The crowd stirred like disturbed hornets. Heads turned, whispers spread. Even hardened men stepped back when the woman was brought forward. She moved with chains around her wrists, but her spine stayed straight as a rifle barrel. Her dark skin gleamed with sweat and defiance. Everything about her posture said she'd rather die standing than live kneeling. Leela Jackson. The name carried weight in these territories. Some said she poisoned men who crossed her. Others claimed she could kill with a look. The truth lived somewhere between legend and fear. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for spectacle. Zeke's horse stamped, eager to move on. He gathered the reins, ready to ride past this theater of cruelty. Nothing here concerned him. Nothing here was worth the risk of being recognized. Then Leela raised her chained hands to push the hair from her face. The world stopped. There, etched into the brown skin of her wrist, was the mark that haunted his dreams. A snake consuming its own tail. The Ouroboros, perfectly rendered in black ink that had faded with time but never lost its power. Zeke's breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred at the edges. The sounds of the auction faded to nothing. Sarah, his wife, had worn that same mark in that same place. She'd gotten it the day before their wedding, calling it a symbol of eternal return. Life from death, hope from despair, love that conquered even the grave. The tattoo had been the last thing he'd seen before they dragged him away, before they left him for dead, before they took everything that mattered and burned it to ash. But Sarah was gone. 15 years in the ground. How could her mark be here on this woman's skin in this godforsaken place? Zeke's horse sidled nervously. His hands trembled against the leather reins. Around him the auction continued, but he heard none of it, saw none of it. Only that mark, that impossible, haunting mark. A man in the crowd noticed his reaction, then another. Curious eyes began to turn his direction. In a place like this, standing out meant dying. Drawing attention meant running or fighting, and Zeke had promised himself he was done with both. But the tattoo held him like a chain. Leela Jackson stood in her shackles, chin raised in defiance. She didn't know him, didn't know his story, didn't know she carried the ghost of his dead wife on her skin. The bidding began. Men called out prices like they were buying livestock. Some laughed, others licked their lips in anticipation. None of them saw what Zeke saw. None of them understood what that mark meant. The auctioneer raised his gavel. The highest bidder stepped forward, coins already in hand. In moments, Leela Jackson would belong to someone else. The tattoo would disappear into whatever fate awaited her. Zeke's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to ride away, to preserve the life he'd built in the mountains, to stay hidden and stay safe. But Sarah's mark burned in his vision like a brand. The crowd pressed closer, sensing the end of the show. The buyer reached for his money. The auctioneer's gavel began its descent, time balanced on a knife's edge. Zeke's hand moved to his gun, then stopped. Violence would only bring more attention, more questions, more danger than he could handle, but doing nothing felt like betraying Sarah all over again. The gavel fell. The crowd cheered, and Ezekiel Flint had to decide whether the past was worth dying for. The decision came swift as lightning. Zeke spurred his horse toward the hitching posts where the other mounts waited. His knife sliced through leather straps in one fluid motion. A sharp whistle pierced the air. Chaos erupted. Horses bolted in every direction. Men dove for cover as hooves thundered through the crowd. Dust rose like smoke from a battlefield. The auctioneer's voice disappeared beneath the stampede. Zeke rode hard through the confusion. His blade found Leela's chains in the mayhem. Metal parted. She moved without hesitation, swinging up behind him as if they'd planned this dance for years. They rode east toward the broken country where civilization went to die. The wind carried their dust trail away from town. Zeke felt the woman's grip around his waist. Steady, strong. Not the grip of someone rescued, but someone choosing temporary alliance. 5 miles out, he stopped near a cluster of red rocks that jutted from the earth like broken teeth. An abandoned mine shaft gaped in the hillside, dark as a grave, safe as any place could be. Leela slid from the horse before it fully stopped. Her bare feet found the ground with cat-quiet grace. She turned to face him, and Zeke saw intelligence burning in her dark eyes. This was no helpless victim. Why? The single word carried the weight of a loaded gun. Zeke dismounted slowly. His hand stayed visible, peaceful. The tattoo on her wrist caught the late afternoon light and his breath hitched again. "Your mark." He nodded toward her wrist. Leela's fingers moved instinctively to cover the tattoo. The gesture spoke of old habits, old protection. She studied his face with the wariness of someone who'd learned to read danger in every shadow. Many people have marks. Not that one. The silence stretched between them like a taut rope. Desert wind whispered through the rocks. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out its loneliness. Leela's posture shifted, still ready to run, still ready to fight, but listening now. "A white woman gave me this." Her voice carried edges of glass. "Years back, said it meant something about circles, about things coming back around." Zeke's heart stopped beating for 3 long seconds. What was her name? Sarah. The name fell from Leela's lips like a stone into still water. Sarah Flint. The desert floor seemed to tilt beneath Zeke's boots. 15 years of carefully buried grief cracked open like drought-hardened earth meeting rain. His wife's name in the stranger's mouth felt like resurrection and damnation rolled into one. Leela watched his reaction with sharp eyes. She read the truth in his face before he could speak it. "You knew her. She was my wife." The words hung in the air between them, heavy, loaded with implications neither fully understood yet. Leila stepped back. Her hand moved to where a knife might be hidden. Trust didn't come easy to women who wore names like Black Widow. "Prove it." Zeke reached slowly into his vest pocket, drew out a small piece of cloth, faded blue fabric worn soft with age and grief. Sarah's favorite dress, the one she'd worn the day they met. She was teaching children to read when I found her, in a cabin by Bear Creek. She had ink stains on her fingers and chalk dust in her hair. His voice cracked like old leather. She laughed when she was happy, really laughed, like joy was something she could hold in her hands. Leela's defensive stance softened by degrees. The cloth in his hands told its own story of loss and remembrance. "She saved my life." Leela's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Pulled me from a river when I was barely grown, half drowned and running from men who wanted to sell me south." Sounds like her. She died because of it, because she helped people like me. The words hit Zeke like physical blows. He'd always known why Sarah died, but hearing it from someone she'd saved made the wound fresh again. "I was looking for my brother when they took me." Leela's voice hardened. "Marcus, he's been gone 3 months now. Same men who killed your wife got him. The Crimson Snake Gang. You know them. They left me for dead the night they killed Sarah. Been running from them ever since." Another silence fell between them, this one different, charged with possibility and shared purpose. Leela looked toward the horizon where Copper Creek lay hidden in heat haze, then back at Zeke, reading him, measuring him, deciding if he was worth the risk. "I need to find Marcus. I know these mountains. I know the people who might have seen him." The unspoken bargain hung between them like a bridge neither had built but both might cross. Zeke needed answers about Sarah's final days. Leela needed someone who could track through country that ate men alive. They'll be looking for us now. Let them look. Leela walked to the mine entrance and peered into the darkness. Testing. Always testing. We rest here tonight. Move at first light. Zeke nodded. Agreement reached without negotiation. Two broken people choosing to carry each other's burdens because neither could bear their own alone. The sun began its descent toward the jagged horizon. Soon night would wrap them in its protective darkness. Tomorrow they would begin hunting the men who had taken everything from them. But tonight, in this forgotten place, Sarah Flint's legacy lived on in the space between a mountain man's grief and a black widow's vengeance. Dawn came gray and cold. Leela led Zeke through paths that existed only in memory and trust. They rode double on his horse through country that forgot the names of the dead. The safe house sat in a depression between two hills. From a distance it looked abandoned. Closer inspection revealed careful camouflage, a place designed to be overlooked. Smoke rose thin as thread from a hidden chimney. Leela dismounted and walked the final 100 yards alone. Zeke waited with the horse, understanding without words that his presence needed permission here. She returned with a woman whose gray hair crowned a face carved by prairie wind. The woman studied Zeke with eyes that had seen too much and forgot nothing. He's the one Sarah spoke of. Leela's voice carried quiet certainty. The gray-haired woman nodded once, gestured toward the house. Inside, the walls held maps marked in code, names written in careful script, routes traced in different colored ink. This was a place where freedom was planned one dangerous mile at a time. Emma Thorne. The woman's introduction came with calloused hands that gripped firm. Sarah saved my youngest daughter, pulled her from a burning wagon. Zeke's throat tightened. Another story, another life Sarah had touched in those final years. Marcus Jackson came through here 6 months back. Emma's words cut straight to purpose. Bright boy, asked too many questions. Leela straightened. Her brother's name in someone else's mouth always carried weight. He was tracking patterns, following stories of people who went missing on certain routes. Emma pulled out a hand-drawn map. Red X marks scattered across it like drops of blood. Said someone was selling information, trading lives for gold. The revelation hit like cold water. Marcus hadn't stumbled into danger. He'd gone looking for it. The Crimson Snake Gang. Zeke's voice carried old hatred. Worse than robbers. Emma's finger traced the marked routes. They've been intercepting freedom seekers for years, selling location information to bounty hunters, turning safe houses into traps. Leela's hands clenched into fists. Her brother had discovered something that got him taken, something worth killing for. Marcus found proof. Emma continued. Said he had names, dates, evidence that would hang them all. Where is he now? Taken 3 months ago, day after he showed me this. Emma pulled out a crumpled paper, names written in a young man's careful handwriting. Gang members, corrupt officials, everyone involved in the trade. Zeke recognized some of the names. Men who'd been hunting him for 15 years. Men who'd killed Sarah to keep their secrets buried. Your brother was brave. Emma's voice softened. Foolish but brave. Leela studied the list. Her finger stopped on one name near the bottom. Wade Morrison, known as Rattlesnake. The man who'd put a bullet in Zeke's chest and left him bleeding in a ditch. I know him. Zeke's words came out harder than stone. He's the one took Marcus. Emma folded the paper carefully. Been using the boy ever since, making him work. Work how? Informant. Using his knowledge of safe routes to set traps. Emma's voice carried disgust. Threatening to kill Leela if he doesn't cooperate. The room went silent. Outside, wind moved through dry grass with sound like whispered secrets. Leela's face had gone stone still, the kind of stillness that came before storms. He's been forced to betray people. She spoke each word separately, distinct. People trying to reach freedom. Morrison's smart. Cruel but smart. Emma poured coffee from a pot that had seen better decades. Uses family against family, love against love. Zeke understood. The same way they'd used Sarah's compassion against her. the same way they'd turned her greatest strength into the weapon that killed her. Marcus left clues. Emma handed Zeke a small piece of bark with scratches carved into it, dropped it when they took him. Trail markers for anyone smart enough to read them. The marks meant nothing to Zeke, but Leela's face showed recognition. He's in the high country, near Widow's Peak. Her voice carried both hope and dread. That's Morrison's territory. Zeke had avoided those mountains for 15 years. Too many ghosts, too many memories. It's where they killed Sarah, too. The words hung between them, both understanding what going there would mean. Zeke would have to face the place where his old life died. Leela would have to walk into the heart of enemy territory. Emma refilled their cups without being asked. Small kindness in a hard world. There's more. She looked directly at Leela. Your reputation, the Black Widow name, how do you think that started? Leela's jaw tightened. Another secret about to surface. Men who threatened safe houses started dying, quietly, no obvious cause. Emma's voice dropped. Always men who were getting too close to our people. Zeke looked at Leela with new understanding. The Black Widow wasn't just a name, it was a calling. Poison? He asked. Knowledge. Leela's answer came simple and direct. Know a man's weaknesses, his vices, his fears, use them against him. Some died from bad whiskey, others from infected wounds that should have healed clean. Emma smiled without warmth. Amazing how clumsy dangerous men can become. The pieces fell together in Zeke's mind. Leela hadn't just been running from the gang, she'd been hunting them, systematically, carefully. How many? Enough. Leela's tone ended that line of questioning. Emma pulled out another map. This one showed mountain passes and hidden trails, places where armies could hide or single riders could disappear forever. Morrison's expecting you. Her finger tapped a cluster of peaks. Has been since Marcus was taken. This whole thing feels like bait. Zeke studied the terrain. Narrow passes, high cliffs, perfect country for ambushes. Maybe, Leela's voice carried grim determination, but Marcus is still family. Sarah would have gone too. Zeke spoke the truth they both knew. Emma rolled up the maps, handed them to Leela along with a small bag of supplies. Take the North Trail, harder climbing but they won't expect it. She gripped Leela's shoulder. Bring that boy home. They rode out as the sun climbed toward noon. Behind them, the safe house disappeared back into landscape and memory. Ahead lay country where the past waited with loaded guns and 15-year-old grudges. Zeke felt Sarah's presence riding beside them, her ghost pointing the way toward old debts and older pain. The mountains grew larger with each mile. Soon they would learn if justice was worth dying for. The mountain trail rose like prayers toward heaven, narrow switchbacks carved into stone that remembered ice ages and forgotten wars. Zeke led the way on foot, reading the land with 15 years of hiding burned into his instincts. Leela followed 3 steps behind, silent as smoke. Her feet found purchase where his did, avoiding loose shale that might betray their passage. They moved with the patience of hunters who understood that haste buried men in shallow graves. The air thinned as they climbed. Each breath came harder than the last. Below them, the world spread out in shades of brown and gold. Empty country where secrets went to die. They stopped at a shelf of rock that jutted from the mountainside. Zeke studied the terrain ahead with eyes that had learned to see death before it arrived. The path split here. 2 ways forward. Both dangerous. Tell me about her last day. Leela's voice came quiet as wind through pine needles. Zeke's hand stilled on his water bottle, the question he'd avoided for 15 years. The memory that woke him screaming in mountain caves. She was helping a family cross over into Colorado territory, mother and 3 children. His voice cracked like old wood under pressure. I begged her not to go. The silence stretched between them. Below, a hawk circled on currents only it could read. We fought about it. My last words to her were angry ones. Zeke's confession fell into the thin air. Said she cared more about strangers than her own husband. Leela settled beside him on the stone, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to let him choose whether to take it. She told me about you once. Leela's words came careful as footsteps on ice. Said she had a mountain guardian angel who worried too much. The description hit Zeke like a physical blow. Sarah's pet name for him. Words she'd used when his fears got too loud for his courage. She was scared that night too, Leela continued, but more scared of what happened to people when no one helped them. Morrison's men were waiting. They knew the route, knew the timing. Zeke's voice hardened into something that could cut glass. Someone sold that information. Your brother, Marcus, was just a child then, 10 years old. They'd taken him weeks before. Leela's hands clenched into fists. Used him the same way they're using him now. The pieces of that night rearranged themselves in Zeke's mind. Not random violence, planned betrayal, a trap baited with innocence and sprung with blood. He's been carrying that guilt for 15 years. Sarah died because of information he was forced to give. Leela's voice carried the weight of understanding. No wonder he keeps trying to save people. Zeke stood and shouldered his pack. The confession had carved something hollow from his chest, left room for emotions he'd kept buried since Sarah's funeral. They climbed higher as the sun traced its arc across empty sky. The path grew treacherous, loose rock and sudden drops that promised quick endings to careless steps. Near sunset, they reached a vantage point that overlooked the valley where Morrison kept his stronghold. Smoke rose from buildings hidden among the trees. Men moved in patterns that spoke of discipline and preparation. Zeke pulled out a spyglass worn smooth by years of use. The stronghold came into focus through scratched lenses. Too many guards, too many weapons, too much organization for a simple hideout. They're expecting us. His voice carried grim certainty. Leela took the spyglass and studied the compound with eyes trained to find weakness in strength. She counted men, noted patrol patterns, measured distances between buildings. There, she pointed to a figure moving between two structures. That's Marcus. Zeke followed her gesture, a young man carrying water buckets. His movements spoke of defeat and resignation. A broken bird in a cage of his own making. He looks unharmed. They need him functional. Leela's voice carried bitter knowledge. Can't extract information from a corpse. They watched until full darkness swallowed the valley. Campfires bloomed below them like fallen stars. The stronghold settled into night rhythms. Guards changed positions. Sentries took their posts. 30 men, maybe more. Zeke folded the spyglass away. Too many for a direct assault. Good thing we're not planning one. Leela's smile held edges that could draw blood. She pulled out a small leather pouch and showed him its contents. Powders and dried plants that meant nothing to him but everything to someone with her knowledge. The Black Widow doesn't fight armies. Her voice dropped to whisper. She waits for them to poison themselves. They made cold camp on the mountainside. No fire, no light, just two people sharing warmth and watching stars wheel overhead. Sarah used to trace constellations on my back. Zeke's confession came unbidden. Said the stars were promises God made to people who felt lost. Do you feel lost now? The question hung between them. Honest and immediate and impossible to avoid. Less than I did yesterday. Leela's hand found his in the darkness. Calloused fingers that spoke of hard work and harder choices. Not romance. Something deeper. Recognition of shared burdens and common purpose. We'll get him back. And if it kills us, then we die knowing we tried. The mountain wind carried their words away into darkness. Below, Morrison's stronghold waited like a mouth full of broken teeth. Tomorrow they would walk into the trap that had been 15 years in the making. But tonight, they were two broken people who'd found something worth fixing in each other. Two ghosts learning to be human again under stars that remembered Sarah's laughter and promised nothing but the chance to try. Dawn would bring decisions that couldn't be undone. For now, they held each other's trust and let that be enough. The mountains settled into deep quiet. Even the wind held its breath. In the valley below, Marcus Jackson slept in chains while his sister planned his freedom. Above them all, Sarah Flint's spirit kept watch over the living who still believed in justice. Time moved like water over stone. Slow. Inevitable. Wearing everything down to truth. They descended at first light when shadows still offered protection. Zeke moved through undergrowth that whispered secrets to morning wind. Leela followed like smoke given form. The stronghold's outer perimeter came into view through pine branches. Guards walked predictable patterns, men grown lazy with routine and false security. Leela's powder worked its quiet magic on the well water, tasteless, odorless, guaranteed to send grown men running for the outhouse within the hour. The Black Widow's calling card written in stomach cramps and desperation. They found Marcus in the third building they checked, a storage shed converted to makeshift prison. He sat hunched over a desk, copying names from a ledger with the mechanical precision of the defeated. Zeke's lockpick opened the door with barely a whisper. Marcus looked up from his work. His face showed no joy at seeing them, only bone-deep shame and something worse than fear. "You shouldn't have come." His voice carried the hollow sound of broken bells. Leela stepped into the dim space. Her brother had grown thin. Shadows lived under his eyes where laughter used to dwell. "We're family." "Family," Marcus laughed without humor. "You know what I've done for family." The ledger lay open between them. Names written in Marcus's careful script, roots marked in red ink. A catalog of betrayals stretching back 15 years. "They made you." Zeke's voice carried understanding earned through his own years of running. "Did they?" Marcus stood on unsteady legs. "First time, maybe, but after that, after I saw what happened to the people whose names I gave them." The confession hung in the stale air, truth too heavy for the small room to contain. "I kept doing it anyway. Told myself it was to protect you." Marcus looked at his sister with eyes that had seen too much. "But really, I was just too scared to die." Leela moved toward her brother. He stepped back against the wall. "Don't. You don't understand what I've become." "Then tell me." Marcus pulled up his sleeve. Scars covered his forearm from wrist to elbow, some old, some fresh. A roadmap of self-inflicted punishment. "Every name I gave them, every family that got caught, I mark it here." His voice broke into pieces. "So I never forget what I am." The silence stretched between them. Outside, men shouted in confusion as Leela's powder began its work. Chaos bloomed in the compound. "Sarah Flint." Marcus spoke the name like a prayer for the damned. "I gave them her route, her timing, everything." Zeke's hands clenched into fists. 15 years of grief focused into razor-sharp hatred. The boy who'd killed his wife stood 3 feet away, helpless, broken, waiting for judgment. "You were 10 years old. Old enough to know better. Old enough to be scared." Leela's voice cut through her brother's self-loathing. "Old enough to want to live." She had children with her that night, a mother and 3 babies. Marcus's words came faster now, poison finally bleeding from an infected wound. "They all died because of me." Zeke felt Sarah's presence in the room, her ghost watching, waiting to see what kind of man she'd married, what kind of justice he'd choose. "What would you have me do?" His voice came quiet as death. "What I deserve." "And what's that?" Marcus looked up with eyes that begged for ending, for release from 15 years of carrying the dead. "You know." Zeke's hand moved to his gun, the weight of it familiar as breathing. Justice waited in 6 chambers of cold metal, but Sarah's voice whispered in his memory, her words from their wedding night, about circles, about life from death, about love that conquered even graves. "She forgave you." The words fell into silence like stones into deep water. "What?" "Sarah, in her final moments, Emma told me." The lie came easy as truth. Some mercies were worth the cost. "She said to tell the boy it wasn't his fault." Marcus collapsed like a building with its foundation cut away. Sobs racked his thin frame. 15 years of grief pouring out in broken sounds. Leela knelt beside her brother, arms around shoulders that carried too much weight for their years. "We're leaving, all of us." Her voice allowed no argument. "Morrison knows you're here." Marcus wiped his face with shaking hands. "This whole thing is a trap. He's been waiting since the day you broke those chains. Then we'll spring it on our terms." Footsteps echoed outside, heavy boots moving with purpose. The chaos was ending, order reasserting itself. "There are others." Marcus gestured toward the back of the shed. "Prisoners, people Morrison keeps for leverage." Zeke saw them now in the dim light. 5 figures huddled in the corner. A woman with 2 children, an old man with kind eyes. A teenage girl who looked at them with desperate hope. We can't leave them. We can't save everyone. Sarah tried to. The words hung between them. Challenge and accusation and plea all wrapped together. Morrison's voice boomed across the compound. Orders barked in the tone of a man who'd waited 15 years for this moment. He knows we're here. Leela moved to the window. Guards regrouping. Maybe 20 men still functional. There's another way out. Marcus pulled up a loose floorboard. Tunnel leads to the old mine shaft. How long? Hour crawl, maybe more with the others. Outside, dogs began barking. Morrison had brought trackers. The noose was tightening. Zeke looked at the prisoners, at Marcus, at Leela, at the choice that would define what kind of man he'd become. Sarah's ghost smiled in his memory, proud of the husband who'd learned her lessons about circles and second chances. We take them all. The decision made, they moved with desperate efficiency. Marcus led the way into darkness that smelled of earth and old fear. Behind them, Morrison's voice grew closer. The mountain would either shelter them or become their tomb, but they would face whatever came together. Family forged not by blood but by choice, by the simple decision to try. The tunnel breathed with the mountain's ancient lungs. Marcus crawled through darkness that had swallowed secrets for decades. Behind him, the prisoners followed single file, fear and hope moving through stone veins older than memory. Zeke brought up the rear, his ears strained for sounds of pursuit. Morrison's voice echoed from the compound above, growing fainter with each yard of earth between them. They emerged from the old mine shaft as the sun reached its zenith. Blinding light after tunnel darkness. The prisoners blinked and shielded their eyes against freedom they'd stopped believing in. How far to the rendezvous? Leela helped the woman with children find solid footing on loose shale. 2 miles. Maybe 3. Marcus pointed toward a ridge that cut the sky. Emma's people will be waiting. They moved across open ground like ghosts fleeing daylight. The rescued prisoners stumbled on legs weakened by captivity. Progress came measured in heartbeats and shallow breaths. Behind them, dogs bayed with the hunger of predators who'd found fresh scent. Morrison appeared on the ridge they'd just abandoned, his silhouette black against cloudless sky. Even at distance, his rage radiated heat that could melt stone. There, he pointed directly at them. Run them down. The chase began in earnest. 15 armed men on horseback against 8 people on foot across terrain that offered no mercy to the slow. Zeke made the choice that had been building since he'd seen Leela's tattoo. He stopped running, turned to face the pursuit. Take them to safety. I'm not leaving you. Leela's voice carried iron wrapped in silk. Someone has to end this. Marcus understood first. The older brother's debt finally coming due, the payment 15 years in arrears. Morrison wants me alive. He'll negotiate. No. Leela stepped between Marcus and the approaching riders. We do this together or not at all. The 3 of them stood in the open while the rescued prisoners climbed toward safety. Family by choice facing destiny with empty hands and full hearts. Morrison rode up with his men arranged in a semicircle, guns drawn but not yet aimed. He wanted to savor this moment. 15 years of hunting finally at an end. Ezekiel Flint, the mountain man who wouldn't die. Morrison dismounted with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. His weathered face split into a smile that promised unpleasant endings. You cost me a lot of business over the years. Good. Killing you quick would be wasteful. Morrison's eyes moved to Leela. But watching you suffer, that has value. We have something you want more than revenge. Leela's voice carried calm authority. Morrison laughed, a sound like grinding stone. What could you possibly offer me? Sarah's ledger. The words hit Morrison like physical blows. His smile died. Color drained from his sun-weathered cheeks. That's impossible. We searched her body. Searched the wagon. She hid it well. Zeke reached slowly into his jacket, drew out a leather-bound book wrapped in oiled cloth. Every name, every bribe, every route you ever sold. Morrison's men shifted nervously. They recognized the book from stories, the evidence that could hang them all. Give it to me. Come and take it. Zeke held the ledger over his head. One quick motion would scatter its pages to the wind. 15 years of carefully recorded crimes lost to mountain air. You're bluffing. Maybe. The standoff stretched between them, Morrison calculating odds, Zeke waiting for the moment when greed overcame caution. It came when Morrison stepped forward, hand extended, eyes fixed on the book that contained his destruction. Leela moved faster than thought. Her hidden blade found the space between Morrison's ribs, not to kill, to disable, to remove the head from the snake without becoming a killer herself. Morrison dropped to his knees, surprise replacing arrogance on his weathered face. Federal marshals. Marcus pointed toward the ridge. Emma sent word days ago. A line of riders appeared against the sky, badges glinting in afternoon sun, justice arriving with the weight of law behind it. Morrison's men threw down their weapons. 15 years of running ended not with bullets but with the slow grinding of legal machinery. The marshals took Morrison away in chains. His empire of betrayal collapsed into testimony and evidence. The ledger that Sarah died protecting finally saw daylight. 6 months later, Zeke knelt beside a simple headstone in the cemetery at Bear Creek. Wildflowers covered the grave in waves of purple and gold. Sarah's favorites, the ones she'd gathered the morning she died. Leela stood beside him, her hand warm on his shoulder. Marcus waited nearby with the rescued prisoners who'd become family, all of them bound by shared survival and the memory of a woman who'd believed in second chances. The headstone bore Sarah's name and dates. Below them, carved in clean lines, was the Ouroboros, the snake consuming its tail, life from death, hope from despair, love that conquered even graves. She'd be proud. Leela's voice carried certainty earned through blood and forgiveness. Think so? I know so. Marcus approached with flowers picked from the meadow where Sarah used to teach children to read. His scars had faded but not disappeared. Some marks were meant to be carried, reminders of prices paid and lessons learned. Thank you. He laid the flowers beside the others, for letting me live with it instead of die from it. Zeke stood and brushed dirt from his knees. The mountain man who'd learned to be human again. The ghost who'd chosen life over haunting. What now? Now we keep her work alive. Leela's smile held promise of tomorrow's worth fighting for. Together, they walked away from the cemetery as the sun painted the mountains gold. 3 people who'd found family in the space between grief and grace. Behind them, Sarah's spirit rested easy in earth that remembered her laughter. The Ouroboros turned eternal on her stone. Circle complete. Story ended where it began, with love that death could not diminish and hope that refused to die. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.